Shalom. In this week's Torah portion, Parashat Shemini begins with the culmination on the 8th day, the apex of the joyous inauguration of the tabernacle. And then the Parsha continues with the untimely passing of the two sons of Aaron. And then we are introduced to the laws of kashrut, the kosher dietary laws. You know, the idea, you are what you eat, expresses the notion that to be fit and healthy, you need to eat good food. But what's up with this expression, you are what you eat? You ever wonder what the origin of that phrase is? We did. And we did some investigating. And here is what we came up with. This phrase, you are what you eat, has come to us via quite a circuitous routes. No? Circuitous roots. Anelthim Brillant Savarin wrote, now pardon my French because I'm a little rusty. Je suis juif, but my French is not perfect. But Anelthim Brillant Savarin wrote in Physiologie de Gout, Meditations de Gastronomie Transcendente, in 1826, he wrote as follows: Dis-moi c'est quoi tu manges, je te dirai c'est quoi tu es. Tell me what you eat, and I will tell you what you are. In an essay titled Concerning Spiritualism and Materialism, 1863, Ludwig Andreas Feuerbach wrote, Der Mensch ist, was est. That translates into English as, man is what he eats. Now, I assume that neither Brillat Savarin nor Feuerbach meant their quotations to be taken literally. They were stating that the food that one eats has a bearing on one's state of mind and health. The actual phrase in English, you are what you eat, didn't emerge until some later. In the 20s and 30s, the nutritionist Victor Lindlar, who was a strong believer in the idea that food controls health, developed the catabolic diet. That view gained some adherents at the time, and the earliest known printed example is from an advert for beef in a 1923 edition of the Bridgeport Telegraph for United Meat Markets, which said, 90% of the diseases known to man are caused by cheap foodstuffs. You are what you eat. 1942, Lindlar published, You Are What You Eat, How to Win and Keep Health with Diet. And that seems to be the vehicle that took the phrase into the public consciousness. Lindlar is likely to have also used the term in his radio talks in the late 30s. But the phrase got a new lease of life in the 60s hippie era. The food of choice of the champions of this notion was macrobiotic whole food, and the phrase was adopted by them as a slogan of healthy eating. The belief in the diet in some quarters was so strong that when Adele Davis, a leading spokesperson for the organic food movement, contracted the cancer that later killed her, she attributed the illness to the junk food that she ate during her years at college. The truth is, I believe that the whole thing, this whole idea of you are what you eat, begins a lot earlier, right here, in our Torah portion of Shemini. Right here in chapter 11 and verse 44, we find this verse. For I am Hashem your God, you are to sanctify yourselves, and you shall be holy. For I am holy, and you shall not contaminate yourselves through any teeming thing that creeps in the earth. For I am Hashem who elevates you from the land of Egypt to be a God unto you. You shall be holy, for I am holy. This is like, what is that? How could a person be like God? What kind of an instruction is that? You shall be holy, for I am holy. How do we imitate God? And the whole idea of all of the mitzvot, all of the commandments that God gives us in the Torah, they are all designed to lead a person to a state of dveikut, which means the ability to be so close to God, it's like we're clinging to Him in this world. So all of these commandments, they are essentially best defined as advice. It's all advice. God is saying, you know what? Don't stuff up your arteries, that is to say your spiritual arteries, with things that dull your soul and hold back your potential for holiness, your potential for dveikut, for clinging to me. Because yes, this is a spiritual diet, despite all the research and all of the revelations of modern science, that indeed the kosher dietary laws are a much healthier lifestyle and prevent all sorts of horrible illnesses. But that's not the point of the Torah, since this is one of the laws which is considered to be a chok, a decree that is beyond the scope of human comprehension. The Torah prohibits these things because they have a negative spiritual effect on a person. And of course, it's so ironic that people look at the Torah, they look at prohibitions in the Torah, and they say, oh, you're so archaic, how you are so shackled by these laws, that they stop you from doing this and they stop you from doing that. And a truly free person gets to eat whatever they want. Truth is, the true freedom of choice that God tells us to choose life and to choose between right and wrong can really be represented best by this type of example. These foods that are prohibited in the laws of kashrut, we are taught by our sages that they cause a person to become dense. And they automatically distance a person from God, because when we eat, we are imbibing the positive aspects of the food, and we're also elevating the holiness and the source and the essence, the spiritual essence of these things, to a place where they're able to contribute to our service of God. But there are things that, yes, God created, but they are things that we have to choose not to eat because of the negative effect that they will have on us. So we've always said that in this Torah portion, which is so compelling because of the juxtaposition of the untimely death of Nadav and Avihu and this major theme of the laws of kashrut, we've always said that there's a deep connection between these two ideas, the death of Nadav, Avihu, and kashrut. But what is that connection? Perhaps one simple level of meaning is the idea that everything that a person does requires great intention. And you know what? The same deep and perfect and even flawless intention that is required of us, that we must summon to bring an offering before God as they sought to do, that is the same level of intention that a person has to have to simply eat. When we eat, we are not eating for ourselves, we are eating as guardians of the godly soul. And to eat, honestly, is the same thing as to bring an offering in the Holy Temple. But today, we do everything without thinking. We eat without thinking. We do things without thinking. We even think without thinking. But our sages teach that regarding laws like these in the Torah, whenever you find an admonition which is considered to be what's called a fence, something that holds us back and prevents us from doing wrong, whenever you find a fence, there you will find holiness. Meaning that this idea of limiting ourselves, this is the beginning of a lifestyle of emanating a closeness to God. Wherever we're instructed to hold back, by the way, even in instances where something is permitted, but we hold back and we don't give in to every desire, and we think and we have intention of what this means in the long run, that is the beginning of holiness. And of course, this takes us back to the old discussion. What is the definition of holiness, of this state of being separate that somehow is almost an imitation of godliness? Holiness is not what Nadav and Avihu thought, that you have to do something special. Their fire was called strange, it was called unauthorized. They thought that you have to do something that's absolutely extraordinary in order to get God's attention, and in order to be able to live a moment eternally, in order to be able to feel the constant high of closeness to God. They thought it has to be something special, and who could blame them? The truth is that the summation of the people's experience that we read about in this parsha, right before they made that move In chapter 9, verses 23 and 24, look at the summation of the experience of what was going on at the inauguration of the tabernacle. Verses tell us Moshe and Aaron came to the tent of meeting, and they went out and they blessed the people, and the glory of Hashem appeared to the entire people! Exclamation mark. And a fire went forth from Hashem and consumed upon the altar the burnt offerings, etc. Verse continues and says, the people saw and sang glad song, Vayarunu, and fell upon their faces. And this word, Vayarunu, the people saw this, and they sang glad song. That word appears nowhere else in the Torah. Small wonder that Nadav and Avihu wanted that moment to last forever. This glad song, they fell upon their faces. Why did they fall upon their faces? On Yom Kippur, when we are standing in the Beit HaMikdash, in the Holy Temple, and we hear Hashem's true name, we all fall on our faces. Why? Is it fear or awe? Is it reverence? No. It's a total nullification of self, bitul. It is dvekut. It is becoming part of the whole, of the total unity of Hashem. And the instructions that Hashem gives us right here in this parsha, it's quite a giveaway. To continue that state of vayaronu, of the people seeing Hashem in their lives and singing glad song and literally falling on their faces out of this sheer ecstasy of attachment to godliness in this world. The advice of how to get there is by living a real life through the advice Hashem gives us of keeping the mitzvot. And what does it mean to be holy? You know, people talk about living a spiritual life. They talk about a life of brotherly loves. Show me someone who knows how to live it. What it's all about is you are what you eat, you are what you do, you are what you think, you are what you say. And as the Torah tells us, you are to sanctify yourselves and you shall be holy, for I am holy.